I'd forget something. This is the vlog for January 21st, 2019. What a 24 hours it's been. After I did the last one of these, a friend of mine mentioned that the eclipse, the lunar eclipse, was happening, and I rushed outside and I let my parents know, and they watched it as well, and it was fantastic. It was a total lunar eclipse. Now, a lot of people think total eclipse means a little ring of light with a dark circle in the center, and that's not actually how it works most of the time. Sometimes, I believe there were places in the United States this year that saw the solar eclipse in that fashion. We didn't get a chance to see it like that here in Washington that I remember. But that's a pretty powerful thing, anyways, to go outside and have this weird light that's also dark. It's eerie. I wish I'd spent less time looking at the sun through my little special viewing thing, and more time looking around at the strange multi shadows that objects were casting. But last night's lunar eclipse was also very nice and didn't last very long. I went out about a half an hour later, right before I went to bed, and it had already finished. Today was eventful. I moved a whole bunch of stuff down to the storage unit, and after that I went for a walk down at Marymore Park. And while I was down there, I saw a curious thing. In fact, it was right when I was walking over to the lake. There's a little dock that goes out into Lake Sammamish. And I was standing there remarking to myself how still the water was, especially compared to the last time I went. It was quite windy, and the waves were breaking white in a few places. But not today. Today it was completely smooth. Not still, just smooth. And as I was standing there, I heard a jet engine, but not what I normally expect from a jet engine. In fact, when I looked up, I saw the plane in question was moving well below the cloud line at quite a speed. And I thought that was quite interesting. It was heading east. I was facing south, and it was heading east. So from your perspective, it was going like this. It was going, how do I put it? It was going like this. It's hard to do with my wrist. And then when it came over this way, it turned and went over my head. And right before it went behind me, it did a full aileron roll. Now, a lot of people think that's a barrel roll. A barrel roll is different. It actually traces the line of a barrel as the roll occurs. Whereas an aileron roll is really more of a spin in place, and that's what you're doing in Star Fox. Do a barrel roll. But that was highly unusual. And I remarked that to my dad, and he said it was probably a pilot with a friend or family in the area, and they said, keep an eye out at such and such time. If you hear the plane, I'm going to fly overhead and do a little twist. Speaking of aerial acrobatics, or lack thereof, this morning I logged into Elite Dangerous and went on a phenomenally quick and lucrative mining run, and got enough money that I finally bought myself an Anaconda. Now, this is sort of the ship that I've been saving up for, working towards since I started playing the game. It's one of the biggest ships in the game. It's the third most expensive ship in the game. And the other two more expensive ships are gated behind extremely high ranks in two of the major superpowers, the Empire and the Federation. To put it in perspective, another friend of mine who's been playing for well more than a year just got her Rear Admiral rank with the Federation and a new Federal Corvette that she is quite pleased with. And sadly, I'm less pleased with my Anaconda. I knew it was going to be a big ship, but it feels even larger than the Type 7 transport, which was the only other large ship I've ever owned. The Anaconda feels, for starters, it's tall, and the cockpit is at the top of the ship. So every time I go through the mail slot in the station now, I end up banging my head on the damn thing. So it's a little bit frustrating in that regard. I also don't know exactly what I'm going to do with it. The problem with the Anaconda is that you're crippled by choice. You can do so many things with it. It's a fairly good exploration vessel with a long jump range. But I have a long jump range vessel already. It has an incredibly large cargo capacity, but I could get an even larger capacity for a cheaper ship. And in fact, the cargo capacity I have now that I've kitted it out with a whole bunch of other stuff is equal to the Type 7, which is much, much cheaper. I could make it a combat vessel, and it would be very effective in that role. But I'm still not totally sold on combat in this game. In fact, I did some practicing in the simulator with a few ships that the game gave me, and I did all right. It's easier to do well when I'm not terribly concerned with failure. There's no penalties. It's just a simulation. I mean, the whole game's a simulation, but it's a simulation within the simulation itself. So I don't know what to work on now. I think the next thing I'm going to do is work on my Python and my crate, try and figure out exactly what I want to do with each of those. The crate I may make into a more, how do I put this? A more dedicated combat vessel. Although right now I'm sort of inclined to make it a salvage ship with a minor focus on exploration. Something that I can use to take down to a planet, land, take the SRV out, go looking for materials, and also look for degraded signal sources out in space, which are usually wreckage. They can also have materials. And yeah, the Python. The reason I want to take the crate in a more combat-oriented direction is because it can mount a fighter bay, and if I really want to get into, running and gunning, having an extra fighter follow me around in a ship that itself behaves almost like a fighter is pretty sweet. The Python can't have the fighter bay, but it has an extra internal slot, which means it's even better at multi-role sort of stuff. And I don't know. If I wanted to beef it up to combat level shielding, that would seriously hurt its cargo capacity. And right now it's got a cargo capacity just under the Anaconda, which is beefed up for combat, but is a lot harder to fly and is less maneuverable until I upgrade its thrusters, which is going to be a pricey endeavor. So I need to do more mining. I need to figure out which one of my ships I want to make into a dedicated miner. Lots of stuff for me to think about. But like I said, it's been an eventful 24 hours. Who knows what the next 24 are going to give me. I'm Eric Spornitz, and tomorrow will be better. Maybe.